Human, why have you the ring of Artorias? I am Ciaran, and that is a keepsake. I know not how you came upon it, but its owner met his death here. He was a dear companion, and I wish to return the ring to his grave.
Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silvermont, and in this video we're going to be discussing two characters from the first Dark Souls game. Two Knights of Gwyn, contrasting by nature yet aligned in purpose, Lord's Blade Ciaran and Hawkeye Gough. And let's start with their names, shall we? In the Japanese version of Dark Souls, Ciaran's name is spelt in such a way as to suggest that is exactly how it's pronounced, Ciaran. Both she and Gough, however, have unused dialogue wherein they pronounce it Ciaran. But Ciaran is a Gaelic name meaning Little Dark One, or Little Dark-Haired One. And whilst we don't know what colour Ciaran's hair is, we do know that she wears proudly a helmet decorated with an ivory lock. And there is a similar sounding Indian name, Ciaran, which means ray of light. Yet I think the former is more suited to Ciaran, who is, after all, a near perfectly archetypal assassin, more at home in the shadows than the light. It is also typically a male name, with Ciara being the female form. I suppose you could take that to mean perhaps Ciaran was assuming the identity of a man, but I wouldn't see much evidence to back that case up, would you? But who is she? As a Knight of Gwyn, Ciaran's moniker is Lord's Blade, or King's Blade in the original Japanese. Although do note that most cases of king throughout the series were translated to Lord instead. But who were the Lord's Blades? We know very little about them. What we do know is that they were akin to an order of female assassins who worked for Gwyn. The robes Ciaran wore were common to all the Lord's Blades, who shift nimbly between layers of darkness, etching streaks of gold into the night air and planting visions of terror into the minds of their targets. That last line gives me pause though. Plant visions of terror. Is that the goal of an assassin, or is that flowery language? A few translations of the original suggest that they do use fear and word of mouth as tools, but I can't be 100% certain there. But this does seem to imply that the Lord's Blades weren't only used for removing targets, but to intimidate, which raises another question I've brought up several times in the past. Just who would Gwyn need to assassinate? Humans that get out of hand? Considering Ciaran's equipment, that could well be the case. As for the other Lord's Blades, we never seem to meet any throughout the game, unless we take the Painting Guardians to be some offshoot or descendants. Perhaps over time the Lord's Blades became the Painting Guardians. It would seem the gods were fond of these sorts of intimidation tactics, however, if you consider the souvenir of reprisal. The Darkmoon Blades sever the ears of their victims and leave them as grisly reminders. The Painting Guardians bear some resemblance to the Lord's Blade set, and yet we are told they have guarded the Great Painting of Ariamis for ages, passing their duty down through generations, but the reasons for doing so passed from all memory long ago. But surely the events of Oolacile wherein we meet Ciaran, it can't be that long ago. So perhaps the Painting Guardians are similar but ultimately not directly associated with the Lord's Blades? Or maybe it really just has been generations since Oolacile. We can also assume that Ciaran is no human from her dialogue.
You humans, always resorting to force. Then I shall do the same.
There are other instances where she refers to them as you humans, and that to me is proof enough that she does not consider herself human. So what is she? I would imagine the same unnamed race of lords or gods that Ornstein, Artorias and so forth belong to. She is the only one of the four knights not to have a unique model, and likewise the only female of Gwyn's four. As to her lacking a unique model, I can only imagine that was a time or budget constraint. Or maybe she's just small because she's an assassin. Or maybe because she's weak. Gwyn has the ultimate soul, which certainly didn't mean that he was larger than anyone else, but there is some slight connection at least between the strength of one's soul and one's physical size. But ultimately I don't think her stature is too important. But it's not the only thing about her that's small. Her role in the game is small. You can find her after defeating Artorias, praying at a makeshift tomb she has erected for him. You are given the choice to relinquish his soul, and it is here that we get the hint that perhaps she has strong feelings for Artorias. If you take it upon yourself to slay her, Ciaran's last words will be,
"My dear Artorias."
And Gough himself has unused dialogue that further supports this.
If thine was the blade to which Artorias fell, then thou must be wary of Ciaran. She had strong feelings for the great Artorias, the poor, poor girl.
This line also might give us further insight into their relationship. Is Gough saying poor girl because her feelings were unrequited, or because Artorias is no longer amongst the living? In his own content, cut or otherwise, Artorias never makes mention of Ciaran, and there's little to suggest that he returned her feelings, but who can say? What we do know is that Ciaran definitely seemed to look up to Artorias, perhaps to the point of idolizing him.
I must not be presumptuous. Artorias would not have approved.
This is about the extent of her role throughout the trilogy, but there are ripples of the Lord's Blade that carry on through into the second and third game. Kings Vendrick and Alant both employed assassins of similar vein to the Lord's Blade, and Ciaran's voice actor returned in the second game as Sweet Xiaoqua. As for the third game, whilst her weapons are in the game files, they are not obtainable through normal means, but her legacy is somewhat brought to life by the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, a distant daughter of the royal family. The Dancer's soul can be used either to create the spell Soothing Sunlight, a miracle granted to the maidens of Guinevere, or the Dancer's enchanted swords, which bear a slight resemblance to Ciaran's weapons. From this, we could extrapolate that the Dancer was perhaps a distant cousin of Gwyn's house, who was once intended to serve Guinevere. Maybe the same was true of Ciaran, a relation of Gwyn who took up arms to serve him, and this could tie in with the description of her Cyclops mask. Mask of the Lord's Blade Ciaran, one of Gwyn's 4 knights. The Cyclops headpiece is common to all of the Lord's Blades, but Ciaran was determined to earn this soft porcelain mask as a unique decoration of honour. The mask is lined with ivory locks of hair. If this piece is common to all Lord's Blades, then why would Ciaran be determined to earn it as a unique mark of honour? Was it because hers was made of porcelain, or that it was lined with hair? Was she determined to earn it because she was a favoured daughter of the royal line and didn't want it thought that she was given the position through birth, save merit? It could be the case that she wanted to avoid nepotism. Maybe she even thought that might gain her favour in the eyes of a certain Abyss Walker. Unlike Gough, she expresses no interest in Oolacile, Calamite, the Abyss, or anything outside of Artorias. And that gives us a good idea as to where her priorities lie. Her overall role, however, is very small. But what about the Hawkeye archer? Let us move on to him and start with his name. Originally, Hawkeye Gough, until we had his name given to us in dialogue as Gough. It is a name of Welsh origin meaning red. It is quite a common surname in England. As for his moniker of Hawkeye, I don't need to explain that now, do I? He's one heck of a shot with his great bow. Along with Dragon Slayer Ornstein, we can assume that Gough is one of the oldest members of Gwyn's Knights, in that we know he and Ornstein fought dragons, whereas Artorias and Ciaran's involvement with them is unknown. But Gough had honours piled upon him by his king. Gwyn personally gave Gough the medallion that adorns his armour. He also received the Hawk Ring and his Great Helm, and as to that, Gough remarks that he is retired and blind, but upon inspection of his helmet, it states that the eye holes were packed with tree resin by those who dismissed Gough as a brutish giant. Does this mean the resin itself blinded Gough, or is he too stubborn and simple-minded to take off the helmet? If he did receive it from Gwyn, perhaps he would be loath to take it off, even knowing that. It was received as a decoration of knightly honour, as crested and great helms often were. Still, Gough is an archer of uncommon skill. Even without the use of his eyes, he is able to strike the black dragon Calamite on his first attempt. He served Gwyn as a dragon slayer, and in his words compares himself with a dog, which suggests that he didn't think too highly of himself perhaps. Or to put it another way, Gough is quite humble. In Dark Souls he is found in the past, in ancient Ulasil, seemingly trapped in a tower that frankly he had no means of getting into or out of. Was it built around him? Did Calamite drop him in there? We may never know. He laments on his role in life, now that the dragons are no more, but with a little persuasion can be cajoled into aiding the chosen undead in bringing an end to Calamite. He also professes his thanks for putting down Artorias, and offers little hints as to the nature of the abyss. His gauntlets and leggings were crafted of a material similar to what the Silver Knight's armour was made of, and he seems to be on good terms with the giant blacksmith of Anor Londo, which likewise could mean he knows the blacksmith Andre, who was also acquainted with the giant smith. And whilst Andre shows up in Dark Souls 3, and the giant blacksmith shows up in Dark Souls 3, Gough makes no such appearance, but instead there is a giant archer who lives up to the Hawkeye name, shall we say. And as for Dark Souls 2, the giants in that appear to be of a different ilk to Gough and the Royal Sentinels, but their shared name is something I find curious. Both types of giants are Kyojin in Japanese, although if there was any intent to differentiate the two, we could have had the Dark Souls 2 variation known as Titans or some such. Makes you wonder just exactly what the idea there is. Are we supposed to think of them as the same? What about Yorm? Whatever Gough is supposed to be race-wise, it seems that although he led some Silver Knights by all accounts, there were some who thought him a simple brute. Which, well, judging from the giant blacksmith, might not be entirely unfounded. Loyal and amiable, but we can't list verbose as one of the smith's traits. Gough, on the other hand, is quite eloquent in his own way, when waxing nostalgic concerning the dragon hunts, and that there is a common theme amongst the four knights of Gwyn. Ornstein and Gough have no more dragons to hunt. One sits locked away in a tower, the other guards an illusion in a dead city, and Ciaran, she mourns for Artorias and then vanishes, never to be seen again. Artorias alone died with any purpose, attempting rescue of a princess and vanquishing a beast of the abyss.
Such conceit. How did you imagine that the Lord's blade would not reach you?